Hello and welcome to Nonprofit Program Planning and Evaluation. I'm Charles McElveen and I will be your course presenter. First, let's review why we designed this course in Nonprofit Program Planning and Evaluation. I'm going to get to that, but let me lay a little bit of groundwork first. The first thing to consider is that City Vision University has been in partnership with hundreds of ministries and nonprofits over the last 20 years or so. And out of that, we've compiled a set of best practices that you can find here at rescuemissioncurriculum.org. Secondly, we've developed free courses on disruptive innovation in education and instructional design and program design. We've done that with about 23,000 students, and we do that through this environment here at cityvisioninstitute.org. Now, bearing that in mind, we've moved on to add one more layer, and that is this one. And it's not just to educate program staff at nonprofits, but to have you have more impactful holistic programs. So while we are training you, and that may be our intermediate goal, our overarching goal really is to impact the lives of those you serve. And we feel that as ministry multipliers, we can do that by having this course in nonprofit educational program planning. The outcomes of this course first is summarizing the purposes of program planning and evaluation. So why are you going to plan your program? Why will you have a process and plan for evaluation? The second outcome is you're going to elaborate on the interconnected relationship of your theory of change, logic model, and evaluation plan. Now, those are three legs of a stool. They all work together. So as you begin thinking about developing a program, these are the three pieces you need to have in play. Oftentimes, we'll be pretty good at establishing a theory of change and the logic model possibly, and many times nonprofits seem to fall down on the evaluation plan. So that's something we're definitely going to make a move forward in this course. The third outcome is to develop a detailed assessment of your participants' needs and a plan to assess client needs and capabilities in the future. So what is it that's going on in their lives right now? And that's more of a relief type of perspective, but also what will they need for the future? And that's the development piece. So you put those two pieces together, relief and development, and that's one of the key goals here is the outcome number 3. Another outcome is to apply the knowledge of the program development. So you're going to learn up in outcome 2 about the relationship of theory of change, logic, model, evaluation. Here in outcome 4, you're actually going to apply that knowledge by creating a program theory of change, a logic model, and evaluation plan. And just as a quick aside, you'll be doing that with a live project. It's a real live program that you will be assessing within your ministry or service context. Absolutely crucial that you do that. This is not really meant to be a conceptual exercise. It's meant to have concrete, practical application. And then incorporate appropriate measurement, monitoring, and evaluation systems that inform your program decision-making and stakeholder engagement. And that's the piece I told you about that many nonprofits fail on, is creating an evaluation system. But then also, when you're creating that evaluation system, of having that critical feedback loop to going right back into program redesign. So how do you go about the process of quality improvement in your program deployment? So week by week, here's what we're going to be doing, and you can plan on spending about 17 hours a week doing it. So in week 1, we'll look at the foundation of program plan and evaluation, and then week 2, we'll move into the theory of change, need assessment, purpose, and problem statements. So week 2 is going to be a lot of work. It's going to plan on spending every bit of those 17 hours on that second week as you uncover what the needs are, and out of that, developing what the purpose of your program may be, and then what is the actual problem you're trying to solve. Week 3, we'll be looking at outcomes, indicators, and assumptions. Outcomes are what are the hoped for changes in your participants' lives because of the programs, and the indicators are what are the evidences that show you or tell you that those outcomes are being achieved by your participants. And the assumptions we'll deal with are things that you take for granted, so to speak, and things that you assume to be true for these outcomes to be achieved. For instance, if they are able to obtain a budgeting course, for instance, then they'll be able to learn how to budget, then they'll start budgeting, and then eventually they'll be financially solvent. That's the goal. But that's the key assumption. So you'll learn how to articulate that. And then in week 4, we'll be looking at the interventions and rationales. So the interventions are the activities that you're going to be putting in place, and then the rationales, why did you choose that particular intervention? And not only why you chose that particular thing, but why did you place it where you did in the program? So that's an important thing to consider. And we think of scaffolding as you apply one layer, then you move up another layer, and then subsequently a third layer. So everything has a basis. Week 5, we look at quality review and narrative. The quality review is absolutely crucial for your program because that's what enables you to improve. And so we'll talk about different ways that you can do quality review with your theory of change. And the narrative itself, think of that as along the lines of an executive summary. So if you're proposing a program, the narrative is going to be able to identify those key elements that we've just reviewed here in the first few weeks. And how do you present that to program leadership or organizational leadership, actually, to see this program come about. Then we'll look at the Kellogg logic model. There are different ways to sequence a program visually. I've chosen the Kellogg logic model just because the language closely aligns itself with language contained within the theory of change. So we talked about scaffolding. So this helps scaffold the knowledge that you've already picked up, and then you're able to apply it in a concrete way into the logic model. Then in weeks 7 and 8, we're actually going to move into program evaluation. So we'll look at the different types of evaluation and stakeholder needs, such as we'll be looking at formative and summative evaluations. And those are crucial, and you'll be looking at different research methods, for instance, qualitative and quantitative research. And then lesson 8 are the success indicators. What is it that tells you that you're succeeding? We'll show you how to compile your data and then how to report it out to stakeholders. So that's the outline by week. Now, this course will help you become a better balanced manager and leader. And within City Vision University, it's important that we strive for balance because oftentimes, especially within a ministry setting, you develop a dichotomy, competing values with, well, this is business or it's ministry. Whether we're going to be doing day-to-day operations or we have an emphasis on being more entrepreneurial and getting out there and trying new things. So there are some courses that are going to work on these competencies, and you can see up in the upper left quadrant here, we have the ministry and relational competencies, and then this course fits within that skill of a ministry and a relational competency. It builds on a lot of these things that are above it. Lower right-hand corner, you can see business and funding competencies and the courses that go with that. Lower left corner, operations and governance competencies, the courses that we offer in that. And then innovation competencies, and then the courses we offer in that. So nonprofit program design evaluation, although it sits within the ministry skill area, it is still going to require some entrepreneurial output because you'll be seeking audience input. You'll be wanting to make sure that what you are having in mind matches what it is that your prospective participants need. And in essence, you're making sure that you have a scratch where they have an itch and vice versa. And then here's our capstone courses, which are Intro to Business, Nonprofit Ministry Management, Strategic Management. So our philosophy and design for this course, this is based upon Bloom's taxonomy. And so it works progressively upward. And this is, again, I come back to the phrasing of scaffolding. So remembering is when you take notes, you go to live meetings and forums, that's to apply and understand. There'll be some analyzing and evaluation that happens within that as well, but primarily applying and understanding happens through our forums and the 3 live sessions that we'll have over the course. Analyzing will happen through written assignments and then evaluation and creating. That's where your 3 legs of your stool come in: the theory of change project, logic model project, and evaluation plan project. Now, how can we improve your effectiveness at your local ministry or your place of service? Whether these 4 pieces here that have been developed, the first upper left-hand corner is nonprofit educational program design. Now, that's a free course you can find on City Vision Institute, and that really does work hand in hand with the course here in the lower right quadrant, which is nonprofit program planning and evaluation. If you've taken nonprofit educational program design, the language, the format, the sequence will all feel very familiar to you when you take nonprofit program planning and evaluation. In the upper right-hand corner, we've got vocation, calling, and purpose of work, and that is also a free course, and that may be a course that you would like to graft into the nonprofit program planning and evaluation. We talk about build versus buy and reinventing the wheel. Vocation, calling, and purpose of work is a great way for you to be able to offer a course within your nonprofit program that helps your participants kind of reset themselves to find out what they're about, maybe what God's calling them to be, or how He has wired them, putting them in touch. So that could be an outstanding resource for you. And you couple all those together through rescuemissioncurriculum.org. And eventually it's our goal to be able to have nonprofit program plan and evaluation up on rescuemissioncurriculum.org as well. All right, so for this course, there's a key focus, again, is working within an organization. So in week 1, you're going to have your organization clearly identified. This is not something you can wait on. And the reason being is that everything we do in this course is practical, meaning it's going to have hands-on application. It will be a live project. You will be working with a program that most likely already exists within your service setting. Week 5, you'll submit your theory of change on one of those organizational programs. So you can see already that the theory of change is a big chunk of this course. It's going to take you from weeks 2 through 5. That's 4 weeks inclusively to get that theory of change in. Then in week 6, you're going to submit the logic model, and that won't be so involved because you'll be populating much of that right out of the theory of change. The biggest thing in the logic model is understanding the causal pathway or the outcomes pathway, and just making sure that you have your if-then statement sequenced correctly. And I'll talk about that as we get closer to that lesson. And then in week 8, you're going to submit your evaluation plan, and that's going to come right out of the theory of change and logic model that you completed in weeks 5 and 6. So that's the basic layout of the course. Now the projects in visual form, weeks 2 through 5 are theory of change, followed by your logic model in week 6, and then followed by your evaluation plan in weeks 7 through 8. Now, when you follow the link that's in Populi, or the link that you can see here, it's going to take you out to a Google Doc. And this Google document you can see is laid out. In each one of these sections, I'll clearly indicate week by week which one of these steps that you'll be doing. So this whole document you see right here is just for the theory of change. So if I were you, I would be working through this week by week instead of waiting till the end. If you wait till the end, it's not going to be probably as good a project as you would hope because you've rushed it. So it's designed to move sequentially and thoughtfully from one step to the next. And here's an example of your logic model template with the link above. And once again, you will be populating your logic model primarily right out of the theory of change. A lot of the work you would have already done. So it's more about making sure you have things in the right blocks. And then here's the evaluation plan template. So you can see that each one of these is fairly large. The template for theory of change is pretty big, and the same thing with the evaluation plan. But again, each one of these has been broken out step by step. And here's the benefit to you is if you save these documents to an external folder, then you'll be able to use these as templates exactly as they're intended for you to apply this to other programs. So, planning principles. Things to keep in mind as you're moving forward in this course is, first and foremost, you'll be focused on the participant and their needs first. Then the organization and its services is a means to meet those needs, right here. Oftentimes, organizations will start with what they have to offer, and then they will start searching for participants to market that service to. And that's a backwards approach. I always like to jokingly say that when a person has an itch, your task is to supply the right kind of scratch. And that's what you're doing here in this first step. So I can't overemphasize this point enough. You start with the participant, then you move backwards to the organization. The second thing, ensure the program is reflecting and furthering the organization's mission, vision, and values. So as you're working with this program, from the very beginning, I would write down the mission, vision, and values. Put those up on a sticky note or a chart pack. Keep it in front of you as you're developing each component of the program, and make sure that what you're developing is tracking with the organization's mission, vision, and values. Now, coupled with that is this third point. Designing in from the beginning how you're going to measure, monitor, and evaluate the program. So you need to hold these things in tension. And this is not a sequential thing because you're going to be coming back and forth. So you may start to work on a theory of change. You'll be looking at the mission, vision, values, and you may be thinking you're complying with that. But yet, maybe when you go to the monitor, measure, and evaluate, you'll notice some things that maybe aren't lining up. And maybe it'll be a difficulty in how you're going to measure something or how you're going to monitor. You may realize that, well, how am I going to measure this value? So it's a back and forth activity that's iterative. Again, I'll emphasize this. It's an iterative process. It's cyclical. It's not a linear one time and it's done. So you're going to be referring back to prior weeks every single week. And just so you know, you're going to be getting this crash course in 8 weeks. In reality, to create a program, it could take you months. Because one of the key aspects I've already mentioned is this idea of a robust needs assessment and capacity assessment, and then developing sharply honed purpose statements and problem statements. If you don't have those, it's going to actually take you a lot longer. The last principle I want you to keep in mind is capitalize on partnership. And the reason being is that oftentimes organizations will try and reinvent the wheel. They'll try and establish all their own services within their own organization. And let's face it, that can be expensive because oftentimes we're talking about personnel. And personnel can be one of the largest, if not the largest, expenditure an organization typically runs up against. So a way to pull that cost down and possibly increase quality is by reaching out and having partnerships. And I'll talk at great length about that in future lessons. So for lesson 1, your outcomes are going to be explain the purpose of program planning, and you'll do that through the assignment. Define a theory of change, a logic model evaluation plan, and then lastly, elaborate on the interconnected relationship of those three things. And I just mentioned in the prior slide about the cyclical nature of the theory of change, the logic model evaluation plan. It is definitely going to be cyclical. I can virtually guarantee that when you get to the logic model section in week 6, you may actually find a hole in your outcomes pathway back in your theory of change, and you'll need to update that. So the logic model is going to be super helpful for you in that way. All right, that's it. Next week we'll be diving into lesson 2, which is actually the theory of change itself, and I look forward to talking to you then.